All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us for the Fight for Boxing podcast special. Lucky to have my good friend here, David, known him for over 30 years, 20 years in the media, in sports. Passionate about sports, want to get his insight on boxing direction. And none other than the queen herself, Christine Lopez, in the ring with Christine. She's here as
Hello.
well. Always an honor to have her on. I can't believe she's actually on
Great to
right
be
now.
here. Great to be here.
Right. So want to kind of just dive right into it. So we know that David, with COVID-19, you're working from home, the challenges there. I would like to get your insight as far as just sports in general perspective of coverage, because myself and Christine, we deal with media, sports media. And have you seen things already? And what's your thoughts kind of going forward?
Well, first off, Sean, you said I've known you for over 30 years, but you're almost wrong. I've known you for almost like 40 years, bro, because I have known you since you were like in first grade, I believe, in Mr. Norton's class there at Petrosky Elementary in Alief, Texas. So you're not the young chicken that you're trying to present.
You're telling your age.
All right. I never said math was my forte. So.
Yeah. Dude, you're old. And if you're old, it becomes super old. I think your main question here is like, look, I think there's a lot of fear out there. It depends on what camp you're in, right? You're in the one camp that says, hey, we got to live. We can't allow this to destroy us and destroy our economy and our sports. And we just got to go out there and if you look at the mortality rate, I live with those kind of chances all the time with the flu, with car driving, whatever it may be. And then you have the other school of thought that, dude, we don't understand this virus. We don't know if it's going to kill us. We don't know what it's doing to people. We don't know if it's going to multiply and become another virus. So there's a lot of unknowns out there. And in the sports world, you can't do sports without physical contact, without breathing, without blood, sweat, tears, right? So as a member of the media with older parents and 4 beautiful children at home, I'm fearful. I am scared. But I'm also scared of not doing something because our industry, I mean, we're hanging on, right? People are losing their jobs left and right because, and I'll just take my industry because that's what I'm in. Everybody's in a hard time right now. The entire world is struggling, right? Every company's got their layoffs. In the sports world, if I don't have sports stories to tell, they have no reason to keep me. So it is a very scary time. And I kind of, this about me, Sean, I'm very cautious. I'm going into it very cautious, but I'm doing my work. I am finding ways to tell stories because, and I'm very proud to say this, if you were to watch one of our broadcasts, you would never know that COVID was going on from the kind of content we're giving you. Obviously, it's part of the conversation, but it's not the content, right? We're providing daily and nightly content, but it's a scary world for all of us, right? I mean, you're talking about boxing in general. It's scary to not know what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's a great point. Speaking of being cautious, what things are you actually doing and have you observed that have been different? I know that I've seen you have some great interviews as far as virtually and meeting sessions like this, one with, some Texan players and things like that in Houston. But as far as your managers and your team, what's the expectations they put on you and how have you responded to some of those challenges?
The news must go on. I mean, I signed up for this job, right? So regardless of what I'm doing, the news must go on. If it's a hurricane, if it's COVID-19, if it's a war, everybody at home relies on us to give them information. Fake news or not, we are a disseminator of information, right?
Right.
So from that standpoint, we have to do what we do. We have to. That being said, the safe version of us is, I'll give you an example, Sean. When this first came down, I was on spring break when the talks of the United States might close down, right? There was that talk. I went to work that week. I was very cautious, the hand sanitizer, touching the doors with the elbows, not talking to anybody. And I went to our management, and I was like, hey, I'd like to try to broadcast from home. And they said, you think you can do it? And I'm like, yeah. So I was the first guinea pig for our station, and I brought a monitor, and I put a graphic behind me, and I did sports from home. Was it as good as we're used to seeing at a studio? Obviously not, but we're in a different time right now, right? So I'm just trying to survive. That's part of what I've done. We've got, when we do interviews, we used to get like this close, right? I have a fish pole. I can stand 6 feet back, and I can hold it to get the interview. I have a Lysol can with me everywhere I go. I'm sanitizing, and I'm doing a lot more like this virtually, a lot more on Zoom, a lot more, on FaceTime, Skype. So that's kind of how I've gone about my business. But sometimes I've got to go and do a shoot. It is what it is.
Absolutely, and so it's interesting the fact that the show must go on, and that's the attitude to have. Christine, who's actually on with us, USA boxing coach, mother extraordinaire, and so many I can't even list everything. The podcast we're going for hours. She's done so much for boxing and sports in general. She's big into the media now. They recently pushed back the Olympics. Was there any talk of you covering the Olympics, David?
I'll let Christine start. No.
Oh no, I was going to say yes. They push it back to August 2021. I'm not sure if y'all had heard that or not.
Yeah, no, I wasn't going to cover the Olympics, Sean. It's funny, the way the Olympics works is depending on who's got the broadcast rights, really it's worth going, right? So like NBC's got the rights typically. I believe they have it again. So you'll see a lot more NBC stations there at the Olympics because of the access you get, what you can do, what you can't do. And sometimes it comes down to what local presence we have. So there are a lot of local Houstonians that end up going to the Olympics, obviously. So sometimes those stories, but we do a lot of leading up to kind of stories.
All right. So one thing also that we talked about, prior to coming on here is how dynamic as far as sports perspective and how it's perceived. Christine, thank you again for being on here. Christine was talking about how, to me, she told me, don't feel guilty for, wanting to put fun content out there, to continue to, push content out there. That's who you are and that's what you do. And some people need that. Christine, can you talk a little bit about that and some of the things that you feel that as far as media, just in general, not just boxing, but what's your thoughts on as far as how we should approach going forward and how you approach things now?
Well, I think that most definitely we do have to continue living and we have to go on, but definitely we have to take precautions because it is a different time right now and we don't know if it'll ever go back to whatever normal was or not. But as far as what I do, is I do focus on boxing, but I also focus on helping the local gyms, helping the local fighters, the professional fighters. I mean, they're not getting paid right now. The promoters are not making any money, managers, coaches, the gyms. I own a gym. I'm going on my second month without any patrons, and I still have to pay the rent. Boxing for me is definitely been a lifesaver for myself and for so many others that I've known over the 21 years that I've been involved. And so it's very important. So I am trying to find ways as well to continue to push all of this and push boxing and what's going on in boxing in a very safe way. As y'all mentioned before, with the Zoom interviews, putting up other people's videos. I did something on my page where I said, hey, the first 5 people with t-shirts or any kind of memorabilia that you have as an athlete or a coach or a gym owner, inbox me. I want to buy it. I want to put it out there and then encourage more people to buy it to help support, the fight for boxing. I'm trying to get creative, I really am.
Speaking of creative, and that's kind of why I want to bring these worlds collide. I know that David is extremely creative, and he also has a different perspective because he knows as far as he's not as passionate about boxing as we are, but he knows as far as what works and what doesn't work. David, can you talk to us about what do you think boxing could do, if anything, to raise consciousness but also balance the fact of being considerate to the situation of the COVID-19 pandemic?
Sean, are you doing the show from Beirut? I'm hearing some gunfire in the background.
You know what? I'm so sorry. I am having construction done in my house, and I am in the corner of my room, like hoping and praying to God y'all can't hear that. My husband, his idea of, staying indoors was to be cuddling on the couch. No, honey, we've got work to do.
Oh man, so yeah, it's not me this time, David. It's not Beirut.
It's me.
Hey, Sean, I'll answer that question in a moment. But Raheel, my buddy that I do a lot of shows with, he just asked me for the link to this show. He wants to watch us right now. Is there a way you can, as I'm talking, you can provide me that link and I'll send it to Raheel?
Yeah, you can just go to look up Long in Boxing on YouTube, and we're streaming right now.
I'm not gonna remember that. Just text me when you get a chance. So you're asking me what boxing can do. So a couple things. First off, yeah, you're right. I am not as passionate about boxing like I was as a child, right? But some of that is because as an adult, and you kind of grow into different experiences. So right now, my big thing is soccer. I love soccer. Growing up, I hated soccer. Right now, I love soccer. That's where my free time goes. But there's nothing like a fight night, right? Even a spectacle like the Conor Floyd fight a few years back. The excitement level for a big fight night is unmatched. It's unmatched by the UFC. It's unmatched by some of the big NBA games and NFL games. There's so much of an excitement level, the who's who in the crowd, the excitement level behind it. You've got to grow the sport, I believe, from a grassroots standpoint, make it more friendly for the kids, make it more that everybody has access to it. That's part of my fixing approach, if you will. Second part is we've got to start growing some of these stories. What makes boxing so beautiful for the media is some of the stories behind it. And I'm not saying you got to be Floyd bigger than life, but some personalities that drive the sport. Conor McGregor drives the UFC. Dana White, the face of the UFC, even though he's not a fighter, drives it. Don King during his day was a force, and I'm not a big fan of Don, but they're personalities that get a reaction out of people, evoke emotion, right? That's part of it. You've got to grow the stars. I love Anthony Joshua. I absolutely love him. I watched a documentary on him on Netflix, and I just kind of fell in love with his personality. But nobody knows who the heck Anthony Joshua is unless you're a fight fan, right? If I were to mention who he is to just the normal Joe, they'd be like, maybe. Now, people knew the Klitschko brothers, but their personality was as good as a bunch of rocks, right? I mean, I love their fight game, but nobody knew them really other than what they looked like and what they had accomplished. And they were some legends. Like, we're talking about some very good, but their profile was not raised. It seemed like you have to have an extreme profile like a Floyd. And you also have to have the adversary, right? So what made Tyson, as bad as Tyson was as a man in the ring, he also had people to either hypothetically fight against before he ever fought Evander was a big deal. You have to have, the opponent to kind of get the best. What makes Batman movies great is the Joker, right? You've got to have the yin and the yang. And I don't think there's enough of those personalities that are being thrown out to the crowd. You guys know, but the rest of us at home, unless we're watching HBO After Dark, what was the name of the HBO show we all loved? I can't remember the name when they used to do the behind-the-scenes boxing shows.
The 24/7. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Those shows, to me, help build the fight, help build an audience, help build it all. And we need to get back to that. I really believe that.
So do you think, like as far as Floyd Mayweather, I mean, his whole thing, the money team, he always had money, taking pictures with money, all of his worldly possessions that he has, and he would flash that, and the kids wanted that. They wanted a piece of that. Do you think that today that is still something that's attractive, or are there other things that we see or that we should be seeing or putting out there that are more important than those things?
It's not attractive to me, but it is attractive to someone.
The youth, usually, yeah.
What is attractive is the good guy, bad guy, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or the two worlds colliding. And I keep going back to the Conor fight because I think those two men know how to sell a fight better than anybody, right? They know how to sell a fight. And I think that's one of the things the UFC has done well. I would rather watch I'd rather watch a boxing match over a UFC fight, but I feel like I know the UFC fighters better. And maybe just the top 3 or 4, right? It's not like I know the roster, but I think the big names there. And I think in boxing, you don't have that. So when you ask, what do I like about it? I would like to see more good guy versus bad guy. And yes, the Floyd fancy approach is works for some, but those who don't like it are also intrigued to watch because of the disdain for it.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that boxing fans are less forgiving than the UFC fans, MMA fans, because anytime there is any kind of talk, like, bad talk, that the fighters criticize, and then the fighter has to go back and apologize for something that he said, something that he did, when it's all a show. And they used to do that. I mean, Muhammad Ali did it, there were many others that did it. So I agree with you with the good guy, bad guy. I do.
So I know, David, that
Sean, let me just throw this also.
All right.
I think the internet has hurt all sports, right? And what I mean by that is it has helped in many ways, but if it's not a huge live sporting event, a lot of kids watch things on their phone via highlight or via 140 texts, right?
Oh,
so
yeah, for sure.
A big fight we'll all pay money for. But your random Thursday night fight on ESPN, like you probably won't sit down and watch it. Kids today don't watch the Rockets, Sean, like they used to. They just don't. It's a different world. They're doing their gaming. I mean, they are aware. They watch. They like. But it's a different kind of passion for it.
That's a great point. Also, not just from the standpoint of interest, but what about community impact? I would like to hear your guys' thoughts on that. As far as first David and then Christine, do you think there's a concern that we could be losing a lot of gyms if they close down, and what they mean to these communities, or that's something we just have to work around, or can we work around it? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
We're going to 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, 20 years down the road, we're going to look back at this COVID-19 era and see maybe some beautiful things that came out of it, but some terrible things that came out of it. It may be some of the youth sports in this world that have kind of exploded the last 20 years. They're going to all take a big hit here because there's no money to pay the coaches. There's no money to pay referees. There's no money coming in to keep your gym open. Like Christine's talking about, like there's, and if you do open it privately, you can get in trouble, right? So there's so many things. And then how do you catch up? You never catch up, right? You don't, I mean, if you get a GoFundMe account, you might catch up, but you might not. There's so many small businesses that are going to be hurt. So yeah, I do think the gyms are in trouble. And I'm not talking about the 24-hour fitnesses. I'm talking about the heart and soul of boxing gyms around the country. These small mom and pop shops that people have, spent years building. It's going to be hard to rebuild that, excuse me.
So that, Christine, I love your thoughts on that because, obviously you're vested deeply into that.
Most definitely.
Hearing that come from David, what's your thoughts, and how are you feeling that we can maybe change that dynamic?
Well, he is correct. I mean, we are going to lose a lot of gyms. I've already talked to some of my friends that own gyms, and they're going to let them close down. But more importantly, it's like the kids that were in that gym, they were fighting for something. We're not going to have a local tournament for I don't know how long. I mean, the first tournament that we could possibly have, according to USA Boxing, is the JOs in December for the juniors. There's nothing for the elite. There's nothing for the youth. So it's scary because these kids, they're going to get bored. They're going to get tired. What are they training for? If there are gyms to go to, it's like, why are they training? Gym owners who put everything into their gyms and their years and their experience into these kids and everything are going to have nowhere to go. So it's very concerning. My gym personally is nonprofit, but that doesn't mean anything because there are no donations coming in. People are donating to other things, which is wonderful, but there is a big need for the gyms, for the local gyms. It keeps our community stable. It keeps, the kids out of trouble. There's some kids that have really bad homes and they come to the gym for escape. There's just so many different dynamics. And I just don't know what's going to happen in the next few months.
All right. So, yeah, that's definitely, tough pill to swallow. So, Justin, closing, to kind of close this thing out, David, I know you have to go. What would you like to say as far as, what do you think we should do as far as boxing fans and the sports fans in general to help keep the sports and keep these gyms alive? Should we? What's your thoughts, and what can we do to create that interest? Like you said, like if there's a story that needs to be told, what can we do to help tell that story?
Well, it's interesting, Sean, that I believe boxing in the U.S. is a niche sport, just like I think soccer is a niche sport in the U.S. Doesn't mean it doesn't have loyal, loud, huge following. But when we talk about the mainstream media of it, it sometimes doesn't get its A bracket that it deserves, right? At times it certainly does. So I think we got to take a page, or you guys got to take a page from what they do in London, what they do around the world, right? Boxing, if and you guys can correct me on this, it's never been bigger outside of the U.S., right? Around the world, boxing is flourishing more than ever. So
Agree.
what are they doing? And conversely, how do you use that methodology here in the U.S.? Because you can't just copy and paste here in the U.S. because they've tried that in soccer, right? Soccer is the biggest sport in the world, but the MLS and the soccer culture in the U.S., you can't take what they do in Italy, what they do in Spain, and force it down people's throats here in the United States. So you got to take a little bit of what's best there, but also maximize what makes the U.S. So special. Right now, and I don't know how long it's going to be, but it's all about the NFL, followed by probably the NBA. So what can you do to get it in the kids' minds, right? Have kids start from a grassroots level, having boxing introduced, self-defense introduced, whatever it's going to take to get them into that arena, and then having parents cultivate that into a future. I think it's all about grassroots. And as I mentioned when we first started, you got to get some headliners out there, get some stories out there. You've got to, I think it's a travesty that most of the world doesn't know more about the Charlo brothers. I really do. I mean, those are some compelling, awesome young men from A-Leaf.
Twins.
Yeah, twins, and I'm a big fan of them. But those boxing enthusiasts, you guys know. But I think the kids down the street need to know who those guys are as well.
Sure. I totally agree.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time, David. You're a busy man.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. Christine, you mind staying on with me a little bit?
Not at all.
I appreciate it. Thank you, David. You're the man, brother.
Thank you so much, David.
Insight. One last thing, though. Who was your favorite? Which one was your favorite fighter? Was it Roy Jones or Holyfield? Which one would you prefer out of the two?
So I got a few seconds for this. So part of the reason I loved Evander Holyfield was when I was a kid, and I don't know if you remember this, Sean. I used to be on a swim team in the First Colony area.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I drove all the way to there. It was like 30 minutes from our house. But one morning, I saw Evander Holyfield swimming there because he used to train in Houston. And it was an HBO that he was getting ready for an HBO fight, and they were shooting him working out. And I remember when they were previewing that fight, you could see me in the background, and I felt an affinity for Evander. And I believe at that time, he was not a heavyweight. It was earlier.
Cruiser.
Yeah, I think he was a cruiser. And I remember just having an affinity for him. But then when I saw Roy Jones Jr. dismantle, and I remember you were at my house watching this fight. Do you remember the day he destroyed Vinny Pazienza? I mean,
yes.
The poor guy came with a broken neck to that fight. Okay, like he literally, and Roy had no patience for that. Destroyed them. I saw the beauty of the sweet science and how amazing he was. I think Roy, to me, is the best fighter that I ever saw. And I know that's not a popular opinion, but Roy at his peak didn't have another person to fight against. Had he, I think we would look at him the same way we look at Floyd. Unfortunately, we saw Roy get rocked at the end of his career. But other than Floyd, who hasn't gotten rocked at the end of their career? So, but I would say probably Roy was my guy.
Man, I love that passion, brother. You seen that, Christine?
I saw it. I feel it. Love it.
And by the way, have you guys watched that Vinny Pazienza movie? Is it good?
I have not, but I'm gonna have to check it out.
Yeah, it is good. It's awesome. That's another thing too. I know you got to go, but boxing movies are awesome, right?
So you know what we did the other day at the house? My kids are huge Balboa fans, right? Rocky, all the movies.
Of course, yes.
And we love Creed. Although I think Creed 2 was not as good as Creed 1.
Right.
It was good though. You know, it evoked a lot of emotion. It was funny though. I had realized my kids had never watched Rocky Five, and if I remember correctly, Sean, you and I went to the theater to watch Rocky Five.
Right, and we put on our church clothes.
We never didn't wear church clothes, Sean. We were always going to church. But they had never watched the Tommy Gunn fight, and we watched on YouTube, not the whole movie because that movie is a disaster to the franchise. We watched the Tommy Gunn Balboa fight, where, if I remember history correctly, Sean, he was supposed to die when they first wrote the script. He was supposed to die. But he comes up and so there's some great boxing movies. The one that I think is maybe my favorite boxing movie, doesn't evoke the same kind of passion like Rocky does, The Fighter. I thought The Fighter was fantastic with Christian Bale. Just
too.
knocked it out of the park for that movie. Yeah, there's some great boxing movies.
There are.
Awesome. Oh man, this is so great, man. Hopefully we can do this again sometime. Thanks for taking the time again. Really, it means a lot and appreciate it. And glad you got a chance to meet Christine.
Yes, great to meet
Queen
you.
Here, in case you didn't know, next time you come to Dallas, you got to take time to speak to the Queen. Pay your.
You got it, man. I'm going to change my phone number after this. But no, thank you very much for having me on. It's great what you guys do, Sean. You've Christine, I don't know if you know this, but not only have I grown up with Sean my entire life, my very first radio appearance ever was a fake shortwave radio show that Sean and I did at the age of 8 years old at my house.
Oh, I love it. If only you could dig it up.
Oh, it was fake. We thought we were on here. It was like CB radio talking to like
no recorder. You weren't recording it.
We also worked together for a while with the Dallas Mavericks. So I have seen Sean from the age of probably 7 to now. What are you, like 60 now? So it's
at least 61.
Great to see you. Send my love to the family, please. Great seeing you.
Much love, brother. Thanks so much.
Take care. Stay healthy. Thank you.
All right, Christine. Glad you got a chance to talk to David. He's amazing.
Great guy.
One of my kids are named after him.
Oh,
I've known him for years. Well, my least favorite kid, so it's all good. It doesn't matter.
Right. The one that wasn't expected.
Surprise kid. The reason I wanted to, have you on here is, because you mentioned before that, not everybody is as open and welcoming to the fact of, we're being honest, like boxing needs help, and a big part of boxing, the foundation to build on is the gyms and these small events. Realistically, what do you think is going to happen post COVID-19 kind of going forward? Dave was talking about, the impact of COVID-19, the pandemic, 5, 10, 15 years down the line. I mean, how do you see it? Do you see it maybe even sooner that we'll see a impact that could be, negative?
I know that we're definitely going to see some change. I'm not sure how they're going to start doing like local shows or national shows or international shows. Are people still going to be leery, not wanting to sit close to others? Are the refs going to want to touch boxers? Are parents going to want their children to compete in local tournaments, smokers, national tournaments, whatever? I think that we don't really know exactly how it's going to impact our beautiful sport, but it definitely is. As I mentioned before, I've already talked to some friends who they have to shut their gym down. I mean, some of them, that was the way that they sustained their life, through their gym. That's how they made their money, and that was what they did full time. Fortunately, my husband and I both have another job, but it is still a struggle to keep the gym open because now, obviously, I'm not working right now until we're called back to camp in Colorado. But I do know that there would definitely be some changes. I just don't know how severe, and I think it's going to depend on our LBCs, or USA Boxing is going to take over and have strategic plan to hold tournaments, and how we already have a list of how we're supposed to run the gym. Did you see that? Yeah. So yes, it's pages. So everything's going to change. I just don't know how it's going to affect the boxers and the parents, because even if the boxers want to come back to the gym, are the parents going to allow it? Are they going to allow them to compete? So it's very up in the air right now, but we're definitely going to see changes. Definitely.
Awesome. We're definitely going to see changes. Our man Elcano local, one of the best YouTubers out there. He gives everybody the up and up on the Puerto Rican prospects. He's the man. He asked an important question, and I had to answer him. He was wondering, how come you're not on more podcasts? I told him that you have your own podcast. Yeah. So
yeah, I'm trying to get it together, but yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
So not only that, for everybody listening too. So the people that are going to hear this, that if they want to help you, the best way to reach you, and to support their local gyms is to reach out. There's social media. People can reach out to you in the social media, and the support is definitely greatly appreciated and needed. And like Christine is saying, and like we want you guys to understand, there's people's lives that are at stake as far as, not just livelihood, but, people's futures, and they're dealing with our youth. So it's a community issue. So I just want to make sure that we had a chance to talk about that. Anything else that you wanted to, share or put out there, or, throw some shade on somebody or hate or whatever?
Well, I'm just kidding. No, you know what? All I want to say is that no matter where you live, I'm sure around the block there is a local boxing gym. Reach out to the owners, ask them how they're doing, what you can do to help. If there's some kids that are boxers but they're not able to go to the gym, check on them, see how they're doing. For our pros and amateurs that have their own T-shirts or cups or whatever they're selling, to continue their way of life in the boxing world. Let's try to support them. We can't support everybody, but we can spread the word. We can encourage people, and when we can buy a T-shirt from somebody or help somebody clean up a gym, whatever. I mean, I just really encourage everybody to do that, because we do have to fight for boxing. It's a beautiful sport, and I don't want to see it go.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great way to end it. So whatever you can do, Christine said, she even have people help if you're willing to clean, whatever. If you have a talent, you could use that talent to help give a voice, and then use the hashtag Fight for Boxing. Again, thank you so much, Christine. This has been a special Fight for Boxing podcast. The Manny brothers, my brothers, aren't here, unfortunately, but we're going to continue the Fight for Boxing hashtag going forward. I mean, because it's not a one bout, it's not a tournament. This is going forward. We got to continue to fight for our community. And again, thank you so much, Christine, for all you do. And
thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thanks for everybody listening. Oh yeah, again, shout out to Elcano. He said that he gets talking a little bit of crap. That's what he does. He said, I know I'm subscribed, but I haven't had any uploaded in a while. So he's kind of saying, get on the good foot, Christine.
You know what? I got you. You're going to see something soon. Thank you. Thanks for subscribing.
All right. Thanks so much, guys. And appreciate it. And we're out. Fight for Boxing. Appreciate it. Love you guys. Thanks. Out.